Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome everyone to our explainer on what has got to be one of the most fascinating and honestly enduring mysteries in all of human history. We're talking about a literal 3,000-year-old enigma. It's something that has shaped entire empires, sparked just endless archaeological quests, and, maybe most surprisingly, acts as this profound connective tissue between three of the world's major religions.
So, according to the source material we're looking at today, all three Abrahamic faiths, that's Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, actually share a really deep reverence for a miraculous wooden chest. Now, in Islamic tradition, you'll hear it called Taboot-e-Sakina, and in Judeo-Christian traditions, it's pretty much universally known as the Ark of the Covenant. But listen, this wasn't just some ancient storage box. Oh no. For thousands of years, this relic has been viewed as the absolute ultimate symbol of victory, divine presence, and unparalleled peace.
To make sense of all this massive history, here is a roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll look inside the sacred ark. Then we'll trace its incredible journey through time. After that, we'll explore Solomon's temple, examine the modern search for the ark, and finally, wrap up by looking at the end times prophecies. All right, let's get into it.
Part 1. Inside the Sacred Ark, unboxing history's greatest relic.
Before we track where this thing went, we really need to understand what it actually was, right? And why it commanded such absolute awe. Let's start with the name itself. The source explains that the word Sakina literally comes from the root word for peace. The texts describe this ark as something that actively bestowed tranquility, comfort, and serenity right into the hearts of believers. Historically, the Israelites didn't just keep it hidden away in a back room somewhere. They would actually place it at the very front of their armies during battle. It was this tangible source of morale and spiritual courage that just gave them the confidence to face completely impossible odds.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just the sheer weight of history contained within this one single chest. According to the source, it was essentially a divine time capsule of the prophets. Inside, it held the original stone tablets given to Moses at Mount Sinai, the original written Torah, the legendary staff of Moses, a preserved jar of manna, the heavenly food that sustained the Israelites in the desert. And get this, even the garments and bones of Prophet Joseph, brought all the way out of Egypt.
Physically speaking, this thing was an absolute masterpiece. The texts describe a chest crafted from rare shamshad wood, coated entirely, we're talking inside and out, in pure, blinding gold. To give you a sense of scale, it measured exactly 3 yards long by 2 yards wide, and sitting right on top of its golden lid were 2 golden birds. It was just this unmistakable, stunning testament to ancient craftsmanship and sheer devotion.
And this immense significance, it's echoed directly in the religious texts. Take a look at this Quranic verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, which our source material highlights as really central evidence of the ark's divine nature. It details how the physical return of this chest to the Israelites, literally carried by angels, was the ultimate divine sign proving the legitimate rule of King Talut. So you see, it wasn't just a sacred object, it was a literal kingmaker.
Which brings us to Part 2, a journey through time, from Sinai to Babylon. The source text suggests this chest has an unbelievably long lineage. Some traditions even claim it was an inheritance passed down through 124,000 prophets, going all the way back to Adam. But if we trace its documented path chronologically, the ark started its journey with Moses, kept in a special worship tent during those long Sinai desert wanderings. It was later lost, then miraculously returned during the era of King Talut. After that, King David moved it to a dedicated tent in Jerusalem. Finally, under King Solomon, it was placed in the most sacred inner chamber of the newly built temple, and there it sat until the Babylonian era, when King Nebuchadnezzar invaded Jerusalem, totally destroyed the temple and scattered its treasures.
But actually, scratch that. Before it ever made it to Solomon's temple, it had a rather dramatic detour. The source shares this totally fascinating anecdote about its capture by the Amalekites. So the Israelites had disobeyed God, and as a result, they actually lose the ark in battle. The captors take it and disrespectfully just dump it in a dirty area. Well, almost immediately, they're struck by these deadly diseases. Realizing the relic is literally cursing them, they panic, put it on a bull cart, and send it away. And miraculously, the text says 4 angels guided that cart safely right back to Prophet Samuel.
Let's move to Part 3, Solomon's Magnificent Temple, or Haikale-Sulamai. So, after generations of being housed in temporary tents, King Solomon kicks off this monumental construction project. The goal? To build a permanent, absolutely breathtaking resting place for the Ark in Jerusalem. But guys, this was no ordinary human feat. The source material explains that Solomon wanted to use massive, precious stones, rubies, emeralds, and gold. Because the human resources and capabilities of that era just weren't enough for his grand vision, Solomon, who was granted unparalleled earthly authority, actually commanded the jinn to build it.
And this brilliantly illustrates a fascinating story from the text about how the temple was finally completed. Knowing the jinn might just stop working if he passed away, Solomon stood in a transparent glass chamber, leaning heavily on his staff in prayer, and he actually died in that exact position. Because he appeared to be deep in prayer, the jinn were totally terrified and kept working for an entire year to finish the temple. It was only when termites ate away at his wooden staff, causing his body to fall, that they finally realized he had passed.
All right, part 4, the search for the Ark. Where is it today? So, in the absolute chaos of the Babylonian invasion, the temple was burned to the ground, and the Ark just vanished, without a trace. So where in the world is it now? Our source neutrally outlines a few of the really prominent theories that archaeologists and treasure hunters have been chasing for decades now. Some, like the archaeologist Ron Wyatt, have claimed it's still hidden in a secret cave system somewhere in the Middle East. Then there's another very strong tradition stating it was taken to Ethiopia by Menelik I, the son of the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. There are even modern searchers who have, somewhat strangely, focused their investigations as far away as England, but officially, it remains completely lost.
Finally, part 5, prophecies of the end times, eschatology, and the Ark.
This lost artifact isn't just a matter of dusty ancient history. It is deeply, deeply tied to the theology of the end of the world. Both Judaism and Islam have distinct, really intense beliefs about the Ark's eventual reappearance. So the crucial point is understanding how these beliefs contrast directly based on the source text without us taking any sides here. In Jewish tradition, believers await the rebuilding of the original temple and the return of a king through a historically closed gate, an event that is said to trigger the raising of the dead. Islamic tradition, on the flip side, expects a figure known as Imam Mahdi to ultimately recover the Ark from specific locations, like Lake Tiberias or maybe a cave in Antioch. Furthermore, Islamic tradition views the king anticipated by the Jewish tradition in the specific context as the Dajjal or a false messiah.
Now, it is absolutely vital to grasp these source narratives because they totally contextualize our present day. Like I said, this isn't just ancient history. The geopolitical friction we see today in the Middle East heavily stems from these overlapping historical and religious claims. To put it into perspective, the ground where Masjid-e-Aqsa stands is exactly where the original Temple of Solomon was built. The search for the Ark and the control over this sacred real estate remains a massive point of modern religious and political focus.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. From a chest granting supernatural peace on ancient battlefields to a catalyst for future prophetic events, Taboot-e-Sakina represents the ultimate intersection of faith, history, and mystery. So I'll leave you with this to consider. Is the Ark simply a lost, golden time capsule of ultimate peace? Or is it the actual key waiting to unlock the prophecies of the end times? Thank you so much for joining us, and keep asking questions.